And we're back with Matthew 14, part 2, and we're reading verse 13 through 21. And talking about the 5,000 now, the feeding of the 5,000. We also know there's two different accounts, two different events that Jesus feeds thousands, and they are in the different Gospels, but we're going to pick up here in Matthew. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Now, what had happened was, again, we're kind of picking up the context from yesterday, that John the Baptist has been beheaded. So this is Jesus' cousin. He was very close to him. He loved him. So he is grief-stricken, and it leads him to wanting to withdraw and get into a solitary place to just grieve. But that doesn't exactly work. He's not given the space to grieve. So hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. Excuse me. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So even with all that he was feeling emotionally and he was struggling, he still had the compassion for the people and paused in his own grief to take care and heal them. I was actually reminded of a story I was going back over. I am a Western fan. I grew up loving Westerns. I'll tell you a little bit about my old soul here. But my heroes, my celebrity heroes growing up was Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. And I remember one of the stories that was told that when Roy Rogers lost his first wife, he had just come out of the hospital and was tears streaming down his face, and he was just obviously filled with grief. Their son was born, but at the same time, she had lost her life, and it was just a horrible time. But when he went out into the parking lot, he was leaning against the car, and all these children were coming up to him wanting to have autographs. And even in his state of grief, he had that compassion for them and love for them, that he was still signing autographs while he was crying. And this is kind of the picture that I see with Jesus, is he still ministered to them. He still healed them, even though he may have been doing it through battling his own tears and struggling with his, just the horrorness of just what had happened to his cousin. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." "We have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish," they answered. "Bring them here to me," he said, and he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So roughly, you have 5,000 men. If they're all married and they all have children, you're looking at minimum of about 10,000 people. Again, this is far more than all of these villages could handle. This is the population of those villages this was a combination of a lot of villages. So trying to go and get food for everybody was going to be a quite the feat. Now, let's turn to Luke 9, verse 12. And we read this. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging, because we are in a remote place here." Same thing, of course, same story. He replied, "You give them something to eat." They answered, "We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd." About 5,000 men were there. Now, this is something my husband and I only just recently had our eyes open to, because I don't know how we've never actually seen this. But I think in the church realm, I guess, if you will, we seem to have this mindset that Jesus and his disciples did not have much money, because it says that he didn't have a place to lay his head, which that wasn't exactly the full context, because he would go and stay with Lazarus and Martha and Mary and all that. But that's a whole different concept or conversation. But they did have a lot of money that was coming into their ministry. In fact, because they had Judas, who was the treasurer, and we know he was skimming off the top. So he was making pretty good money off of what they were getting, and he was just skimming. Now, here's the thing that we never noticed. It says, they answered, "We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd." It was not in a sarcastic tone. They were actually saying, well, we have money, which will blow your mind right there. We have the money to be able to do this, but it's going to take a lot of work. So, I mean, we can provide the food, but that means we have to go out to the towns. We're going to deplete the towns of all their resources. And even then, how are we going to have that much to take care of everybody? Then, on top of that, you have to get the carts and everything else to be able to bring it up to where they are. And it's a long distance and all these things that would be part of trying to get them food. But the concept that kind of blew my husband and my mind is that these are thousands of people. You're talking a lot of money to feed these people. And the disciples didn't seem to be questioning that part. They weren't questioning the finances of it. They had the finances to do it, which is mind-boggling to me because we have this poverty mindset that they were poor, but God wanted them to be, and it's in, I think it's 2 Corinthians that talks about that you have a heart of generosity. I think 2 Corinthians 9. Let me find it real quick. That you should have generosity. You should be so generous. Yeah, 2 Corinthians 9. To be able to give abundantly, for it to overflow, to give up to other people. Look in 2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 15. Let me just kind of shorten it here and go to just a little bit. But if you read the whole passage, verse 10, now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will also supply and increase your store of seed and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous on every occasion when you're needing to be able to take care of people. And through us, your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. This service that you perform is not only supplying the needs of God's people, but is also overflowing in many expressions of thanks to God. Because of the service by which you have proved yourselves, men will praise God for the obedience that accompanies your confession of the gospel of Christ, and for your generosity in sharing with them and with everyone else. And of course, it continues. So Jesus provides ways for us to be able to have that, to overflow in generosity and abundance to take care of others. And this is what's going on here in the story. But Jesus is so compassionate on them. He's not saying, well, go ahead and you can take the money and go ahead and go feed them. But he, of course, he turns to them and says, you feed them. And they're saying, okay, well, the calculations here, how long will it take? But Jesus is saying, let's use the resources we have right here because my heart is for them. And I see that they're hungry right now. And it's going to take a long time to do all that. Let's take care of the need right now. So that's when he turns and says, what do you have? And it's the 5 loaves and 2 fish. And we know that from the other gospels that it was from a young boy that willingly sacrifices his lunch to feed thousands of people. The faith of that little boy too. Now the last part here, just to kind of mention, is the word for basket in this feeding of the 5,000 is different than the basket that's used in the 4,000. This basket is the word kophinus. I think is how you pronounce it, kophinus. It's used as a hamper for carrying kosher foods. It was more of a small container. And so in later on, we're going to get to actually the next chapter in 15. That is a different basket. That one's a much larger basket. So anyway, this is kind of the basic background information, understanding of this particular passage of the 5,000. And like I said, this kind of has blown my mind because I've never really seen it in the sense that it was not an issue for the disciples to go and get the food if they needed to get the food. So that will rattle any kind of pre-judgment thinking of Jesus and his disciples being poor. They were always prepared to be able to help people because that is the heart of God, is to be able to bless and bless abundantly those that are in need, which he also did for many of the disciples, even with the taxes and providing the taxes for Peter. So anyway, leave that off, some food for thought as you're kind of digging into this story.